seer prophet. There are a lot of questions concerning the seer prophet, the seer realm. Do you have to be born a seer prophet? My belief is that God calls his prophets before the foundation, before they are born, before they are in their mother's womb. They are created, called, ordained to be prophets. There are a lot of examples of, people being called to be a prophet by other prophets. There are also examples of Elisha being in a place where I think it was his servant, and the servant couldn't see that there were more for them than there were against them, and Elisha opened the eyes or he prayed to God, and God opened the eyes of the servant so that he could see the host of warriors all around them in a time of, when he needed his eyes to see. Now, the scripture doesn't say that he became a prophet after that, but I know that the gift of seeing is something that you don't have to be a prophet to be. But when we look at Ezekiel, let's look at the book of Ezekiel, because none of the prophets except for Samuel do we really get an understanding of a child prophet. Samuel was called at a young age when he was living in the temple with Eli, and he heard God calling him into ministry. But you don't really hear about too many young prophets outside of Joseph being a young prophet. We don't know what age he was when he was seeing and dreaming and seeing his parents would bow down before him and things of that nature. But when we look at the book of Ezekiel, you find the examples of the strangeness and the, undescribable things that Ezekiel saw. From the beginning, right off the rip, we find that Ezekiel is seeing these four-faced creatures, wheels in the middle of the wheel, and he describes not only what he's seeing, but what he's hearing, what he's experiencing, what's going on around him, enough for a lot of people to believe that he was having some kind of physical encounter with some type of spaceship or whatever. But Ezekiel's experience was so vivid and so real that as a seer, you know that you can be at one place and have an experience that's so real that you're able to see and sense and smell and touch and, be in two places at one time. You don't physically have to be somewhere in order to spiritually experience everything that's going on. Even in the destiny call, when the experience that I had with God being called to the office of a prophet, God took me to a place. Now, I can't tell whether I was there physically or spiritually, but I felt everything that was going on around me. I heard everything that was going on around me, and I remember vividly, like even as I'm looking into this camera, I can see that day what God showed me, what I experienced, what I felt, what I smelt, But people who don't understand will always put it off on something else. But anywho, when you are a seer, you're seeing strange things. You're not able to understand. Sometimes you think you're in between two worlds, not just as a seer, as a prophet. I believe that there are Nabi prophets as well who have experiences where, they don't know whether God has already said a thing to them, and they hear a thing and it's like deja vu. The same with the seer. Sometimes we get so lost in time that when you're experiencing something, you think that you've already seen this, you've already experienced this already happened, I already, know what the outcome of this is going to be because it's already happened, but you don't necessarily remember the vision, the dream, or whatever it was, or the experience that you had in some way. And now that it is happening, you don't quite understand it. And sometimes in a knowing, like some things that that you should not know. You have wisdom beyond your years. Like one day I'm going to tell, the experience that I had, but there are so many people who steal other people's visions and destiny, dreams, and callings and things of that nature that you can't share everything on, all platforms. But when God was showing me some things, and like I said, I was able to sense and smell, but there were some things that didn't make sense then. But now I understand clearly why he didn't allow me to see what I saw and understand what I was seeing clearly, the way that I saw it. But I understand it because now I know some things that he was teaching me then that I didn't understand now, if that makes sense. And it was some things that he was showing me that he hid from me, even though he was telling me what it was that he was saying to me that apply now. Some of the wisdom that I have, there's no way that I should know the things that I know. But God, the experience, what he prepared me for and was preparing me for, I would not be able to comprehend or understand today. But now that it's happening and I'm living in it, I'm able to see it, know it, and understand it. So the seer sees. The seer knows. When we look at Ezekiel was also a hearer. He heard God, everything God say to him. Ezekiel, what do you see? Ezekiel prophesied to the dry bones. And when you are a seer and you read the book of Ezekiel, it becomes so alive and so vivid. Like you can actually see what God was showing Ezekiel. I used to get afraid reading the four-faced creatures that he saw because we, see it as it's just the face of an ox. It's just in the face of a person. It's just the face of a lion and things of that nature. But when you see it in the form of what it is that God showed Ezekiel, it's not just the face of an ox. It's like, hard to describe, but it's not a pretty sight of just the ox that we're used to seeing on a human body. And even with the valley of dry bones, when God says to Ezekiel to prophesy to the dry bones, when the seer reads that, the seer is able to see the dry bones scattered in the valley, and then see Ezekiel prophesying to the dry bones, and they actually come together and come to life and begin to stand up as bones. And then you see the veins and the nerves and the blood going through the veins and everything coming together, the skin and the muscles, and the muscles and then the skin covering everything underneath. And you see a person standing there, as Ezekiel saw. So when you read certain things, and which is why we have to protect your eye gates and your ear gate and even what comes out of your mouth, because being a prophet, if you don't protect what you see, you're going to be tormented on top of the torment that you're already going through, especially when you're in the process of becoming. And even the hearer, you can't just listen to and hear all types of things getting into your spirit. You recognize the spiritual realm, and seeing things in the spiritual realm, you're not always able to understand what it is that you are trying to describe with your little finite mind. When God is dealing with you, God is showing you things in the spiritual realm. And from the standpoint of where he is, where he lives, what he's showing you, what it is that he needs you to see. So you can't always describe the things the way that people can understand it. And this is why when we look at the book of Ezekiel, you see things that you cannot understand. There's a scripture, a passage in Ezekiel that says, and he sat where they sat. And I can see Ezekiel sitting like up on a mountaintop looking into a city. And as he's looking into the city, he's looking at a people. And he was able to understand the people and see the people. I think it was by the river Chabar. What was the name of the river? It starts with a C. Is it Chabar? But whatever. He sat and he looked at the people, and he was able to see the people, not his interpretation of the people, not what he thought the people were going through and the life of the people. It's just like in your communities around you, when you go into urban areas and things, a lot of people, we walk past the people, but when you're a seer, you're able to see into the people, that these are people, human beings, but that these are people who are walking zombies. These are people who their spirits, are turned off. The light is turned off and they're walking death. They're walking dead. But it does not mean that they are not valuable and human. So when you see things, but it's not just seeing into the spiritual realm only. You see the spirit of the person, but you understand that this is God's creation and God's child and God's thing. You see the potential and the better of a thing. You see the purpose in things. You see the plan of God and the heart of God in things and in people. So being a seer is not just what we see far as angels and demons and things of that nature. It's a seeing in your knower. Like the sons of Issachar, being able to discern the timing and see the seasoning, see the changing, of the season and the changing of the time and the discerning when to move and when to stay still. And there's a changing of the guards, of being able to see warfare coming. And sometimes we get caught up as seers and think that everything is about, war. We have to have balance. We are not just seers just to see the demonic and the things that's going on, from that standpoint. God placed us on the earth to prosper. And sometimes we have to see where God is taking us, the direction, the right decisions to make, the plans that he has for us. And it's not just about, waiting for God to drop pie out the sky and show us. We have to use the gifts, the seeing, the discerning, the knowing, the sensing, the feeling, the touching, the smelling, the hearing. So I hope that this helps a lot of you who have many questions about seeing and the seer realm. It's so much more to the seer prophet. The seer, actually, let me touch a little bit on that too. The seer prophet receives revelation from God on, what's coming up, what's happening, what the next move is, what's the decision that needs to be made, which way we need to turn, what's coming, how to warn the people, what to show the people. The seer may have eyes to see, that their eyes are open, and not necessarily be a prophet when you're a dreamer and you're seeing visions and things of that nature, and God is showing you things, but it's not necessarily a revelation or a prophecy of things to come, things that are going to happen, things that are happening right now, how to shift it, how to change it, how to deal with it, how to pluck it up, how to tear it down, how to root it up, how to plant, and how to grow, how to build some things. Decisions, that come out of relationship and partnership of what God, the interaction, the relationship that you have with God. It is you and God. When you have a gift that you can just see in the spirit, and it's not just because it's very important for the things that you see. But when you're a seer and you're able to see some things, God gives you discerning of spirits, which is one of the gifts of the spirit. So you're able to discern some things. You're able to see some things on, some people. Somebody asked me about being a seer and what did she say? And being an intercessor. Intercessor do have open eyes to see because they're able to discern different spirits, what type of spirit is operating. Is there a demonic force, a demonic entity in this person? When you're called to intercession, then you're able to see into a spirit realm. But the prophet is usually have seen and dreamed and had trances and things of that nature for as long as the prophet can remember as a child. Your parents, when you talk to your parents about the experiences of things that you've seen and used to see and used to be afraid, you see things in the day, you see things in the night, things you can't describe, things you describe that nobody else sees or nobody else can identify with. God gives you an urgency. You feel responsible, or you mature very quickly because you're concerned about the things of the world, the things going on the earth, the things going on, in your community, and things that are far advanced and ahead of time. And that's not for all prophets, but that was a part of my experience. Growing up and experiencing things, even as a toddler, being concerned about the cares of the world and sitting under adult conversations of what was going on in the 60s and 70s, because I was born in 1966, So during a time of segregation and discrimination and listening, crying and hearing, and having the seriousness. My dad said I used to want to save everybody and save the world, and had like a maturity and an urgency and a seriousness about me at a very, very young age, when I should have been playing and being a toddler. I was mature, a mature toddler, as if I was 12 at the age of a toddler. So a seer and a seer prophet, just because you see, it does not mean that you may be a prophet. But when you are a prophet, you have a relationship, a back and forward, receiving and an instruction for God on what's next and what to do, direction, guidance. A seer can just see a thing and then know how to cast the devil out, or how to do whatever needs to be done by a skill. But a prophet is going to follow and hear and obey the instructions that they get from God, as God shows them what the problem is, or what's going on, how to deal with it, what to do about it, where to go, where to take it, who to tell it to, things of that nature. So I hope this helps you to understand a little bit more about the seer and the seer prophet. This is Let's Talk Church. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell so that you will receive a notification whenever I am live, or either when I upload new content. Have a blessed and prosperous day on purpose.